fascinating to go there, see the originals. Then you see that they are very thin, or they are deformed, or they were cut down, and so you have to imagine how they did them and try to make the closest that you can to the original.
So was this instrument, so when you're making an instrument, are you
I'm trying to
sort of considering your own dimensions?
Yes, I'm trying to imagine how they did it. For example, we went in a museum in Lübeck. They have an original which still has its short neck, and it was made without a mold, without corner blocks. And so I tried to make it the same way, and it was an adventure because I didn't know what to expect, how it was moving, and so it was fun, but it was also very emotional to listen to this sound at the end, because while I was making it, I was almost convinced that it couldn't play because it was too strange for me, for the thicknesses and for
it has an amazing resonance.
Yes, and then at the end it was it had a great sound, and so I was like, wow. So.
Amazing. Speaking of historical instruments, do you all have access, or how often do you see the classical instruments from which to kind of put that into your work?
I have very frequently access due to musicians coming to my shop. Instruments by Antonio Stradivari to Russian instruments and to also more modern instruments, and certainly generally European instruments. Now and then I see older instruments also from other parts of the world. Since we are moving into, I think, a very a different kind of instrument making. As Sophia pointed out, we can live anywhere and do our job, and that's what violin makers do. And I don't see schools anymore as we did, like the Cremonese School of Violin Making, or the Russian School, or the Mittenwald School for Violin Making, with that. But we now see people who have worked with a certain idea, and those idea carriers like Francis Cutler and other people who teach are people who are, I would say now you are of the school of Francis Cutler, which has not really a physical city in mind, but actually the person and the idea that person is reflecting in our profession.
I think that's probably actually getting back to the classical model, really, right. Because there was not Antonio did not go to the Cremona School of Violin Making. He worked for a master, so I think it's kind of that, maybe getting back to that.
But it was very much localized, so it's easier. It was easy to say, oh, this is a Cremonese style instrument versus now when you look at all these fabulous instruments here, and you look at all these different influences coming from the modeling to the varnishing, and basically all these different ideas represented, I think, are also a representation of today's tradition of violin making, which is a little bit different than the original tradition. I see it at least that way.
Sophia, I remember listing your instruments on our website, and I have written copy. But you told me that you consider it a model of, not a copy. Can you tell us about the difference?
I like to make many different models, because every model has a different sound. So every musician has a different taste. So it's good to make like different sounding instruments, because you can reach like the taste that many different musicians can have. But I don't like to copy exactly like arching and everything, because I want that after 100 years they will look at the violin and say, oh, it was Luthier Victoria. So that's why I want to do like the arching like I like to do, and everything else, the varnishing, like inspired by my own taste.
do you approach designing?
I don't do copies either, and even if I'm trying, and it's impossible to copy. The level of the anticipation and everything is like no, it's not something that I can. So I pick the outline of one instrument that I like, and that I told before, they would show you where to go, so you cannot change that too much. And I like to feel the wood. I try to feel the density, tactile. So every time that I hear something different, I didn't try. I want to try. And the important for me is the comfort of the pliability. But one model that I do constantly, because the shape of the instrument is so comfortable all the time, is the best that is here in Washington.
And we hope tomorrow we can.
So I'm looking forward to see that violin, because I have the mold and everything, and it's so comfortable to play. But I have here 3 different models. One, the viola, the Alto, the model that they created in Italy in 2017. And the same is the 21.6, so it's very comfortable for that 16-inch viola. Another ordinary and 2 ordinaries model, the outline, try. And then is my interpretation and
As I had asked about before, as far as struggles are concerned, I know that a lot of violin makers get to the point they've made the instrument and now it's time to varnish. So, and they either fail or succeed, or somewhere in between maybe, but it's a struggle. Does it remain a struggle for anyone, or
for me, that's when you arrive to that point of varnishing, you're deterred, you're deterred, and it's so pleasant to work the varnish, starting from the ground and all the layers, and it's like just coloring. For me, it's just arrive, it's just your presence, you're deterred to varnish the instrument, and so. But you are the master. And I can say that you mentioned that your instruments would remind, and they said, it's Sophia, I just play all the instruments with I just, Sophia said, the smell of the varnish is really nice. Sophia.
Yeah, I love varnishing so much. Maybe because it was also the first thing I learned. So as I didn't go to school, I learned from my father, and he's the most enthusiastic, positive person you could ever met. And he's always like, when you do something, he'll always say, bello, bello. Maybe it's a disaster, but it's always bello. And so that pushes you to go on and make better. And so he just gave me like a brush that I still have and I still use, a jar of varnish and one of his violins, and say, why varnish it? So, and then I was just from there experimenting, and I was doing the first time teaching it like 25 years ago, where nobody was almost making instruments, and was taking the tape, scotch tape, and inventing stuff. So I was always very free to experiment. Once I can remember with my father, we wanted to do something with the midollo. He was saying, so we need to try this midollo stuff to make the ground color. And so we knew a guy that had a butcher shop,